And please disconnect from audio. No sound. And Celeste, please,
I'm not going to go into that. I know that. I know you figured it out.
Before we go on, I guess there's no chance of raising the temperature in this room. A couple degrees.
I got a sweatshirt inside. It says challenge.
we can keep it cool to speed up the meeting.
All right, let's get started. We have returned from our executive session and are now starting our public meeting. Good evening and welcome to the public meeting of Township Committee on February 22nd, 2022. Let's all rise to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Closer, somebody's next. Oh. Still working out the kinks of our new system. So. Good. Are we good? Okay. Welcome everyone to our fourth meeting of the year. At the start of this meeting, I set out as one of our central goals for this committee to fix, maintain, and upgrade our infrastructure and facilities. Last meeting, we visited this topic with a focus on our initial 2022 road paving plan. Another
will push out information as it's updated. This is one of their biggest fundraisers, so I hope folks will come out to support the senior center. Golf lessons are starting Wednesday, March 9th at 12:30 p.m., 4 sessions in total. People can come to the entire session or individual lessons, bring their own clubs. On March 15th at 11 a.m., the senior center is having a free legal forum regarding advanced medical directives and how to start a conversation with family and loved ones about your health and personal care plans. The panel includes an attorney and nurse geriatric care manager. The program is funded by a grant from the New Jersey Bar Association, and you can call the senior center to enroll. As mentioned in the last meeting, the senior center received funding from Morris County to offer a free evidence-based online weight loss management program to residents over 60. Again, contact the senior center for more information. AARP volunteers are doing tax preparation at the senior center on Fridays throughout the tax season. Again, residents can call the senior center for an appointment. The communications committee, we're continuing to move forward with tech improvements and websites and social media improvements. I would ask the boards and the committees and their liaisons to reach out to Megan Gates with updates for their respective website pages. The Madison Chatham Coalition had a successful sticker shock campaign reminding adults that it is illegal to purchase or provide alcohol to anyone under 21. Madison Chatham Coalition and Project Community Pride are hosting the at-home version of a night of conversation during the month of March to help parents and teens talk about mental health and substance use issues. You can get more information at MadisonChathamCoalition.org. If you're a parent of a teen and you're trying to open a discussion, I highly encourage you to do a great job of creating kind of a package around that program. The last update, Rolling Mills Landfill Community Advisory Group met via Zoom on February 15th. And the next meeting is on March 29th by Zoom at 6 p.m. All community members are welcome to join. And those meetings are posted to the website at thegreatswamp.org. So definitely good to get updated and get information on that. And I'm all set with my updates.
I think we're working again.
Okay. You can read it.
Yes.
Yes.
What?
You can
Yes,
read it.
fine.
Yes.
If I don't read it, I won't get it.
You can read
You
it.
can read it.
Okay. First of all, I have the DPW has been working really hard as usual. I don't know how to do it, but this past week they just salting operation at 3:45 a.m. for 1 inch of snow. They started to inspect basins for the 2022 paving list. They added stone and rolled it with their 2-ton roller on various sections of the swamp road. They did 1 day of filling potholes all around town. They continue to cut down the low-lying trees, branches around town. Finished painting the offices at the police station. Started to reconfigure their command center. That involved removing old flooring, wiring, counters, and cabinets. They completed repairing and painting all the blue benches at Colony Pool. They started to scrap. They're starting to scrap, repair, and paint picnic tables and benches for Colony Pool. Working at the senior center, adding electrical outlets in rooms and the hallway. And they started to scrap and paint all lawnmowers. So I think they've been pretty busy, and thank you very much again. The Historical Society and the Chatham Library on last Sunday presented a virtual program titled The Real Housewives of New Jersey, Early American Women and Their Kitchen Gardens. Everyone enjoyed a very interesting presentation, including myself, which was presented by Leslie Parness. It was attended by over 40 people, and we all received a listing of seed sources and other colonial revolutionary sites in New Jersey. And then since I live next to the power lines, I can hear it on windy days, you hear chirping of these, it sounds like really loud birds. And a lot of people, I think, were upset about it. So it seems that the wires were rubbing together, and that's what causes the sound. They'll be putting in spacers in the next week or so, so that should stop. So that's the end of my story here.
These are new wires that they just put up?
Yeah. And you can see they're there, down the line of it, towards Livingston, where they've already put the space.
Committeeman Lewis.
Okay, just to continue on with the utilities there, JCP&L, I met with them and we've been reviewing some data about reliability and specifically about reporting of some reliability and issues that residents have had. They trace mostly back to the Gillette substation, and I'm waiting for additional reporting on that Gillette substation. Most specifically, the what upgrades and improvements are going to be coming. The data and reporting that I did review with them shows a nice tapering of the number of outages and incidents that we've had, even in this Spireville area, which is good. For communications, the mayor addressed that. I won't belabor it. I will say that our township clerk really helped us get on YouTube Live, and also other staff, of course, Alex helped a lot to make improvements there. And for rec, they were attempting to set another meeting. It was previously meeting on the same night as this meeting, and so they have been looking for another night to meet, and they're hoping to have one more meeting before the spring season begins. Colin Poole is giving advice on fees, and we have a resolution before us tonight to finally set those fees for this season. And then finally, our finance committee has met, and the budget is an ongoing process, but I'm very happy to participate and almost bring to the conclusion the debt restructuring. And so for the first time in 3 years, we'll have a tapering of debt, not an increase in debt. We'll have lower debt service and less pressure on the general budget due to debt. So all things debt are looking better for Chatham Township than they have in the last 2 years, where we've had an explosion of debt previously.
Thank
I
you.
think that's a false statement there. We have the same debt, we just are spreading it out, so our debt service is less. I don't think it's right to mislead the public.
Chair, this is time for
This is-
discussion. I will certainly
this is-
participate, but if it's not.
You're welcome to respond, and then we'll end.
Certainly, the debt has increased from $14 million to $18 million in the last, over 18, it's almost $18.8 million. It's the highest point that I've had the chance to review since I've lived here in 2010. The debt is at its highest possible point right now. The debt, when I would call it a debt explosion, is over 3 years, the debt going from $11 million to $18.8 million in round numbers. I would call that a debt explosion, yes.
All right, Deputy Mayor Hamilton.
I'll be brief. The library, Friends Library book sale is coming up. It's a big event for the year, March 12th. They collected a tremendous amount of donations, so we look forward to everybody coming out and supporting that event, and it's an important one for the library. As far as the Board of Education, I won't belabor that either. As I mentioned at the last meeting, I think that it's pretty common knowledge what the big news on that front is the expiration on March 7th of the governor's mandate for masking in school buildings, and the members of the school board here have more or less all acknowledged that they're going to join most of the other schools in New Jersey, school districts in New Jersey, with adopted the option of mask optional at or very shortly after that time. So that's exciting news on that front. And you know, we all know the mantra about public safety. I did note that, you know, for those of you, online looking at local papers, the Borough Police Department gave a thorough presentation recently about the ramifications that the mayor touched on at the last meeting associated with car theft. And they go far beyond like, oh, you lost your car. You know, it's a very dangerous situation. So, you know, I've been talking to the chief, and as always, just want to implore everybody to make sure you protect both your car and the community by simple act of making sure your vehicle's locked.
Thank you. Do any of our professionals have a report?
I have a report.
Okay. Bob?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. Wanted to report that there's progress at Nash Field. All 8 of the light poles are up and installed. The lights are on the poles. Right now, the electricians are digging the trench for the conduit, so all of the light poles and the lights are being connected. The electrical contractor expects to have this part of the project done by the end of the week. And then next week, they're looking to be able to energize the lights, to test them out, and then to make adjustments. And then there'll be the burn-in period, and we will fix the area where they've dug the trenches, and we should be ready to go with use of Nash Field. So that'll be a nice improvement. And we've got a bank of lights that we can use also for ice skating in the future. I will make one comment. The Finance Committee has been meeting, and we are making progress. I'd just like to point out that the Township Committee is in the middle of implementing its affordable housing obligations for round 3, and some of the debt that has been talked about is a result of implementing our round 3 obligations. So it's something that we are working our way through. But that's part of the calculations with the debt. And then I just want to wish everybody a happy birthday for George Washington. It's the 290th anniversary of one of our founding fathers, and this used to be a national holiday, but it's significant that we remember him, and that's my report. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Bob.
Thank you. Do you have anything?
I have no report, but I do see that John Arskey's online.
Yes, John.
Hi, Mayor. I just wanted to note that Mr. Hoffman issued a letter today to all the committee members regarding the county's paving schedule. I just wanted to note that letter was dated February 2nd. I think that list is inaccurate. I know you've been working very closely with the county, and the county has committed to pave more of Shunpike to you. And so I believe I'll get that clarified or confirmed with the county, but the county did commit to pave more of Shunpike, based on your efforts with them. So I just wanted to note that.
Thank you for reminding me. I forgot that. Yes. Essentially, they agreed that there's a larger portion of Shunpike. They won't do the whole Shunpike Road, which I was hardcore pressuring them to. They will go up to, what was that road? Stonehenge, thank you. Stonehenge, so it covers the worst area of Shunpike. Where there is potholes right there, and then they said that was the best they could do.
So from Southern.
So it's on the
It's in
opposite
Madison.
side, it's on the Madison side,
Basically, it's Lone Hill Chapel, right
before Cougar.
right before.
yeah, thank you. So it's something, we're still asking for
Southern to
more.
there, or from
No.
Watchung to there.
It's actually going from Fairmont. So their original plan was from Fairmont to Noe. And so we were advocating for more because the worst area of Shunpike is actually just past Noe. They really need to go all the way to Southern. They said, we'll give you a partial, little bit more. Take something for now, but we really do need more.
That far, it seems like there's a little stuff.
Correct. Correct, that's been my argument, but we're trying. So thank you, John, for reminding me.
Do we know which end of Stonehenge? Because that's.
The second
Okay.
end, so it is the longer one.
Okay.
The westernmost.
Yes,
The western.
yeah, it's like yes, thank you. All right, so I guess now it's time for the public hearing of citizens. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about any issue that are not topics scheduled for public hearings tonight. Our public hearing of citizens is guided by the Governor of New Jersey's executive orders. At this time, the committee room is open to the public, and we look forward to having you join us. Additionally, this meeting is being made available for public participation remotely. If you're watching cable TV on Comcast Channel 29 or Fios Channel 26, you can participate in the public comment session of this meeting by dialing the phone numbers which are listed on the agenda and which are shown on your TV screen. Please dial *9 to raise your hand. If you're you're watching via Zoom, you may speak during the public comment session by following the Zoom instructions to raise your hand. Whether in person or online, when you're recognized to speak, please say your name, spell your last name, give your street number, and as a reminder, all public comments will be limited to 5 minutes. Rather than use any of your time answering questions, we will wait until you finish speaking before responding. Each member of the public will be limited to 1 comment during the public comment period. Written comments submitted to the township clerk before 3 p.m. today will be read during the public comment session. Written comments are subject to the same guidelines as oral comments. Duplicative written comments may be summarized rather than read in full according to guidelines issued by the New Jersey Division of Local Government Services. Are there any written comments?
No.
All right, let's go to, you may start.
Hi, this is Maureen Kelly. I'm not giving my street number. I'm on Mountain Avenue. Couple things that I obviously came in person because there were things to say, but I want to think that we are remiss when we don't give credit to Albert Cruz for all the work that went on with the Comcast contract to get the money for all these great improvements. So it's not to take away anything from our new attorney, but Albert Cruz really deserves a lot of credit. Second thing, I want to stress that it's so important that all of the township committee members pay very close attention to the Rolling Knolls situation and the CAG meeting. I attended the last CAG meeting. I didn't see some of the faces there, but I do hope that all of you keep up to date on that. The main thing that residents want is for a cleanup to happen, and we want trails there. We don't want the area fenced in. So whatever they need to do to clean it up so we can have trails. We're not interested in putting a soccer field there. Just trails would work for us. The next thing I want to address is the planning board. And I know I'm not the township committee, not the planning board, but I'm coming to you because I did attend the last planning board meeting remotely, which it was all remote. And here's what happened. There was the hearing that was scheduled was postponed, but there was official business taken at that meeting, and the official business seemed to be deciding that as of March 6th or 7th, the meetings would take place in person only, with the exception that planning board members could attend remotely if they needed to. There was no opportunity for a member of the public to comment on that. So you're getting my comment now. And I would have, at the time, commented that I think that's a terrible idea. It lacks transparency. And while there may be challenges in getting a whole planning board in one room and getting a dual setup going on, I think that that's the right thing to do. I think that people in the township, you get better attendance that way. We're bragging about all the new equipment that's coming here. So what I want to say is figure it out. There's a lot of important business that the planning board accomplishes. I think so many more people are able to attend when we have the ability to attend remotely. So I was disappointed that I couldn't make that comment at that meeting. It's probably legal, but it was certainly less than user-friendly. And that's the comment that I wanted to make about that. The next item on my particular agenda is that the Environmental Commission possibly illegally is not allowing public access to their meetings. There's no way to join. If you don't know somebody, there's no way for a member of the public to join. I was on the website today looking, they just have a list of meeting dates. They didn't even post the minutes from the January meeting. So I would like that situation corrected. There was something else. I'm sorry, I lost my notes. I was going to go into a few other items. I'm trying to remember. Nope, he doesn't remember. Well, thank you. And that's probably enough items for you to attend to.
Thank you. Regarding not rolling those, we on advice of council are not able to all participate in these discussions. And we do not have our attorney present on the issue, so I can't really discuss anything more than that. There is liability that's at stake, so we have to do
I just said,
everything.
keep yourselves informed.
And we will. Thank you.
I also noted that some of us weren't there.
Yes.
We are, rest
I know.
assured, we are informed.
Yes, and also, we will be informed. We're not all able to participate.
I understand.
Was our legal guidance, so. Regarding the planning board, it's an issue with the planning board, not much I can really say there. And the environmental commission, Bob, do you have any input on that?
Yes, Madam Mayor, on another topic for the Environmental Commission, but before we go to that, I'd just like to let the Township Committee know that Special Counsel for Rolling Knolls sent an email this afternoon, which was forwarded to the Township Committee, so that they would have the benefit of his input. He did participate in that meeting, or he listened in on the meeting. The Environmental Commission for the January meeting, their next meeting is going to be March 1st, so hopefully there will be minutes that the commission will be able to look at and then adopt, and then they can be posted on that. But speaking of the Environmental Commission, there's the former secretary for the Environmental Commission had resigned. The solicitations had been done for to fill the post. There was 11 resumes were received. They were forwarded to the Environmental Commission, or specifically to the chair. There were interviews that were conducted over the weekend and on Monday. There was a ranking of those that were interviewed, and one of the, or actually the highest ranked individual has indicated that they would be willing to become the Environmental Commission's secretary, and they're available to start. So we will be contacting that person to work out the details.
Is there anything that we could do about public comments or anything, opening it to the public?
That would be up to the,
The chair.
I'll punt over to the township clerk
Okay,
for that.
If the environmental commission sends me an agenda, we'll be glad to post it on the website. And
okay,
the onus is on the, I guess, either the chair or their new secretary when they're trying to get us something to post.
sounds good, thank you.
Well, just for now, it'll be up to the chair since there is no secretary.
Thank you. All right, next.
But just so I understand, so sorry, former mayor, is that changed? Has there been some sort of sea change in the procedure for the Environmental Commission as far as public access?
Not that I'm aware of. But for me personally, it was just earlier this year that it came to my attention that the Environmental Commission was subject to the Open Public Meetings Act. But, I mean, as far as having public access to their meetings, and that's, an easy fix. It's just a matter of when they prepare their agenda, we can post it on the website.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
All right, next.
Thank you. Good evening. Mike Kelly, Mountain Avenue. And just maybe to clarify, just a final thought on those last two topics. Yes, it's great to have the minutes and the agenda on the website, but I think the important part is to have a Zoom link, since they are being held only by Zoom without a link on it. Then there's no perfect part of the agenda. And the planning board comments. Yes, it would be ideal to make those comments directly to the planning board, but if they don't have a public session at the planning board meeting, that's difficult to do. And considering the fact that there are 3 members of the planning board sitting here tonight, just wanted to make sure that at least the three of you knew that, and that it would be helpful to address that public comment session. I just really have one point to make, and that's about the resolution on tonight's agenda that says basically that no person will be able to require masks in any township building or on any township facility. It's great to hear that that's pulled off of the consent agenda, because that was one of my concerns as well. There's not a lot of information here in this resolution, and I hope that some of the questions that I have, and I'm sure other people have, can be addressed in conversation, because it does seem that While I think it's very understandable that we're at the point that the numbers are looking great, that we can be talking about this at all, that I think that the way this is worded right now, it creates more problems than it solves. There are only 3 whereases, and none of them really seem to address why this is the right thing to do right now. One whereas is that the Morris County Public Health Department has confirmed that Morris County is now experiencing a significant decrease in the level of COVID-19 transmissions, which is great, which we all know, but it doesn't really address any input from our own Board of Health. It doesn't include any input from our own regional health officer. What is our situation here in Chatham Township, and is this really the right thing to do now, considering the fact that the governor in less than 2 weeks has a date when this is going to be becoming voluntary statewide. The second whereas is that the governor of New Jersey has eliminated the mask mandate for wearing the face masks in most public places and businesses, which is really only half true. It's effective March 7th, and this resolution would be effective immediately. And the third whereas is that each member of the public and resident of Chatham Township has an individual right to choose to either wear or not wear a mask based on personal choice, health concerns, and medical advice. And I think while that is true, I think it's wrong not to also mention that there is a need for some kind of community responsibility, and to lay this out there that individual rights are the only thing being mentioned, I think puts us in a very exposed position. We don't know if there's going to be another round of variants that cause a problem again coming off of this COVID, and we don't know what the future will bring in terms of any other kind of pandemic problem. And I think to go on record that saying that the only thing that counts is individual rights really runs counter to what the township did during much of this pandemic. Before the vaccine came out, the only tools that we had were masks and social distancing. And during that time, we asked our residents to please abide by those kinds of community concerns, and they did a great job. And we continually thank them from the dais. And things would have been a lot worse if people did not have a blend of both individual rights and community responsibility. And I would think that putting this out there without any recognition of appreciation of what the public has done in the past, and an awareness of what they might be asked to do again in the future for community awareness and concern, that's really only half of the formula that we need to have in our arsenal to address future problems. So thank you for taking it out of the consent agenda. Thank you for any of the discussion as you get to that point on the agenda. I would hope that you can at least delay this until it goes into effect statewide, because I think that will eliminate any potential for confusion with a date for statewide and a separate date here for Chatham Township. And I think that if it does get adopted, the language of it could be improved with a lot more information on why it is the best thing to do right now. Thank you.
Thank you. We can discuss most of that at the moment later, but I can just say we're not precluding anybody from wearing masks. That's just not something that we're doing. We're not.
One more thought, I'm sorry, I just meant to say that downstairs in this building, we have our senior citizen, very successful senior citizen center. Another whereas that would be very great to have in this resolution is what their position is on it. Without any further information or discussion, I could envision where a significant number of senior citizens would feel very uncomfortable in coming to a senior citizen center without some kind of masking and guidance. So there's nothing in the resolution that addresses that at the moment. But if you could shed some light on that, or if you haven't given it full thought, wait and try to reach out to them as well to try to answer that question.
Hi, Phil Uncle, ANKEL J Road. Got a couple topics to talk about today. One has to do with transparency, and the other with treatment of our township volunteers. I'll start with transparency because I know it's something that came up a lot last year, and so I think we're all pretty much on the same page on the issues, that more transparency is better. And that important decisions about township matters should be made in public for all to see and judge. Like spending township resources for outside professional services. It's my money after all that you're spending. I have to know why and how you're spending it. It's really that simple. So it should come as no surprise that I raised objections about the selection of Township Attorney King and will continue to do so. At the meeting in which he was selected, Councilwoman Ewald asked for a list of who had been considered and who had been interviewed for the role. Mayor Felice, you declined to provide that information, even as you expected your fellow committee members to vote on the selection of Mr. King. To my knowledge, you've not yet publicly provided the names of the other attorneys you considered, even as Mr. King is being paid for by my tax dollars, making a charade of transparency. So I did what the normal person who likes transparency did. I filed an Oprah request and asked for all the correspondence related to the selection of Mr. King, including emails and related documents. This is my right and a fundamental protection of transparency in this state. And I received a batch of documents today from Mr. LaTonta. Thank you for that. Remarkably, in those documents, there is not a single email from Mayor Felice, Mr. Lois, or Mr. Hamilton to Mr. King or his law office. No request for proposal, no request for fee rate information, no request for a list of qualifications or similar engagements on which to base the selection for this public contracted position, my township attorney. And there is also not a single mention or documentation or correspondence or any other lawyer that the township committee considered. No other proposal, no other request for proposal, no other meeting request. You get the idea. So we're in a bit of an interesting place. The current majority, while in the minority, harped at every meeting that key topics like appointments ought to be discussed openly in public. That's what transparency is all about, right? And it seems like you're quite capable of doing RFQs since you've done it for the other township positions. I can only hope that in those situations, you won't make a mockery of the process and hire political allies for the positions. If Mr. King is the best lawyer for the job, why not tell us who else you considered? Why not explain in public session what his rate structure is and what you compared it to? Why not explain in public session what makes Mr. King uniquely qualified for an up to $150,000 job on behalf of the township, as opposed to other lawyers? Or perhaps Mr. King's unique qualification is that he's the vice chair of the Morris County Republican Party. Because based on all the evidence I see before me, that appears to be his sole qualification for the job. On the issue of volunteers, I want to read you some names. Paul Wayne, Amish Shah, Rich Ryan, Pauline Morris, Stuart Carr, Nicole Hagner, Doug Pickney, Mike Olson, Melissa Lauer, Sally Allen, Kathy Maloney, Doris Reed, Pooja Swami, Sayatan Chakraborty, Webster Lewin, Disha Modi, Christian Chintan Chusky, Peggy Minka, Jocelyn Shu, Kalpana Tumu, Melissa Hartzell, Rena Lynn, Shazia Seth. These are the volunteers who staffed the Diversity Committee, the Affordable Housing Committee, and the Business Advisory Committee last year. They worked for a year on these very important topics and were, to my understanding, willing and prepared to provide a report to this committee on their work and their recommendations. Mayor Felice, I recall you said you wanted to hear their reports before making any decisions about the future of these committees. And I get that you may want to take a different direction on these committees. That's your right, even if I agree with you. What I do object to is this committee's apparent decision by its actions to pretend that those advisory committees never happened. The honorable thing would have been to invite the committees to report on their work, to thank them for their service, and to make clear that you are considering how to staff advisory committees in the township going forward. And if you decided not to continue those committees, everyone involved could be disappointed, but at least they would know that their work and contribution had been respected. They are volunteers and should be treated that way. Thank you.
All right, thank you. First, regarding Peter King, we beat this to death. We've gone through his rate structure. We have gone through his qualifications. Just because we didn't send an email to you publicly, on our emails, pretty sure we all called you over the phone and spoke. So, sorry, Oprah requested didn't pick it up. I don't know what to tell you. We've also met it. We've beaten this to death. Regarding the individuals that you had listed, those committees were not dissolved. They have to be reappointed because it was done by a resolution. We are in the process of evaluating how to create those committees in a longer term capacity. One aspect, for the affordable housing committee, we wanted to run it by affordable housing attorneys that we have on our agenda tonight. Once we get those in place, we wanted to run our thought process on exactly how to construct this committee so that the town is in the most successful position for our next round of affordable housing, and at the same time that we are kept completely without liability, because there is issues there that could come up in the future. So it's in works in progress right now. We are discussing it behind the scenes, and we have been working back and forth on trying to draft something that would benefit, but we wanted to wait. I think that's really it. Did you have something to say?
Just wanted to cover on the fees and the rates for legal bills. I think you'd be very happy to know that the budget committee has been meeting, the finance committee is meeting, we've been reviewing the budget, and the budgets for legal will be substantially less this year, and the budget reflects that. There's be substantial reductions in what we're spending on legal fees. The rate structure for Mr. King and the resolution is identical to the resolution that was used for the previous firm. And besides that, the RFQs, request for qualifications, is not a request for quotation, it's a request for qualifications. So we're not exchanging rate information, we're not putting this out to bid, so to speak. When you do an RFQ, and that's a term of art, which I think is a little vague, because RFQ stands for qualification, not quotation. Okay, and then finally, I would just say about requests for proposals and the RFQ process. Those processes should have been going on prior, and it was in our bylaws. So really, what we had done was stuck closer to the bylaws than it had ever been stuck to before. That's really what we had done in the RFQ process that we've been going through. And I know it's uncomfortable because it is a change, but it's actually closer to our governing documents.
Just to correct something, the RFQs actually do specifically ask for an hourly rate to be provided.
Yes, and they have them. There is
On these contracts, you're right.
Correct.
When you said that there was no rate provided, it's just qualifications, that's not correct.
well, in our request for the qualifications, we asked them to list what is your rate.
Exactly.
Yes, some of them even have it in there that they're negotiable. So we asked for them to come up with a number, and then that's why it's in the qualifications packet.
So the rates are gonna be the same rates that I have, $165 an hour. Usually for bond counsel, it's different. Environmental counsel, they're different.
There's some that are different as well. There was okay.
If I could just.
Yeah, there was nothing over, we even put, a spreadsheet was sent out to all committee members of the rates of every attorney. Obviously, I think there's more that goes into hiring an attorney, and then you know this, than just their rates. I mean, sometimes you're willing to spend a little bit more for a more qualified attorney in a specific area. Sometimes you want to go with a cheaper attorney. There's more involved in that, but there was a spreadsheet that was sent around to all committee members with everybody who had applied with their rate that they suggested in their qualification packet.
And just it's from my end in responding to the public comment, I would just briefly like to add that there's a lot of political differences around in the community these days, and I understand that, and I have had plenty of dealings with Mr. Aquilin and gotten along civilly with him to more or less. But, you know, I just want to highlight one point that was made at the end, to say that Mr. King's, quote, only qualification is that he is a Republican is frankly condescending and insulting and not true factually. He is a professional attorney of significant experience with a specialization in municipal law and doing exactly the kind of work that he does for us right now. So you may disagree with him and his personal politics, but to say that he doesn't possess sufficient qualifications for his job is just wrong.
And Mr. King, would you like to address that at all? Wanted to make sure you had an opportunity.
I think I'm sorry. I've gone through my qualifications when I was appointed at the last meeting in January when the Seawald asked me those qualifications. I went through, I'm certified municipal diplomat, I'm certified by the state for municipal court law. I've served in various different capacities in various different types of entities and sub-entities. I defend municipalities in environmental law. I do some claims for the Environmental Joint Fund. I'm on a housing authority JIF, Morris JIF. So, I mean, if someone wants to say that I'm not qualified, that's fine. I've been insulted many times in my life and insulted again, I'm sure. So, I appreciate the comments from the committee, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Yes. First up is, about to talk, is Kathy Abbott.
Hi, Kathy Abbott, Wynwood Road. And can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I too am concerned about the lack of public access, remote access to the planning board. And you did say that that's a matter for the planning board. But again, Mrs. Felice, you are, Mayor Felice, you are obviously on the planning board as a mandatory member. I think you have significant leadership there, as does Mr. Hamilton. And I think that your voters, your public is well served to have remote access because we've never had so much participation at the planning board as we've had since we've had the Zoom access. And to remove it is a disservice to the voters and really a negative for no reason, because public input is exactly what you need, especially if you're shaping whole neighborhoods, as you will be, especially with the master plan. But even when neighbors say they're remote, like even Mr. Hamilton was at 1 or 2 meetings ago for this meeting. I mean, if something's happening next door to you, you want to be there, remote or in person. The other thing is that Comcast grant for $35,000 is paying for remote access and improved, audit microphones in where you are right now at the municipal building. So I'm wondering, one, can the money be used? Is there anything left over to help the planning board be remote, new equipment, or can the planning board be moved into the township committee hearing room for its meetings so that the public can use the same remote access as you are going to be providing and are providing now? My second question is, as a former township committee person, I seem to recall that the agenda was vetted by the township attorney, and it's disturbing that this is, there's been a pattern since January of major, very debatable things, not routine things, to be on the consent agenda. Then I know, and you know, that the consent agenda is reserved for items that are so routine that they can be voted on in a block without discussion. And of course, any appointing of new professionals is something that should be discussed amongst the township committee and clearly to the public what kind of changes are happening, why we are adding professionals or changing professionals, what are their qualifications. It all cannot be on the consent agenda. I was so surprised after the criticism from the January meeting with the appointment of Mr. King about why he was on the consent agenda. Suddenly, you're hiring even more people on the consent agenda where there's not supposed to be discussion. It doesn't make any sense. It just seems to be a mistake, and someone should be proofreading the agenda. And I thought that that falls on the township attorney.
Are you done?
If I could, with regard to consent.
Hold on, hold on. Make sure,
Kathy,
I'm finished. Thank you.
thank you.
So the purpose of a consent agenda is you put things on it. Hopefully they can be voted in one motion. And even on our agenda, it even says that routine items that may be passed by a single roll vote. Any committee member may call for a separate discussion or vote on that item. That is what Committee Woman Ewell did, and that's what anyone on this board can do. If there's an issue that they want to discuss further after they have received the packet for over a week, I believe, and have had meetings and called the administrator, had questions, maybe me, if we couldn't answer that, if you think it's so important, or maybe you're getting pressure by citizens to take it off, that's what that purpose is, to take that one item off and discuss it. So that is the transparency that you have here, so that you can ask for things to be discussed at length. I don't think I should be deciding for you, and that's why that language is up there. So if you see something that you're concerned with, or again, your constituents or friends or groups want you to pull it off for discussion, then that's your right, and that's what should be done, and that's what we're doing here. So with regard to the consent agenda, it is working properly the way it is meant to work.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, the code book specifically says that the consent agenda is for routine matters that do not require discussion. And given that this committee cannot discuss anything with more than 2 people, you can't vote anything of a majority without having a discussion. So that's why there's a difference between routine matters and discussion.
What you just said, then there should be no consent agenda, and every single resolution should be voted on. If that's what you want, if you wanted to do that, you could do, but this is to make the meeting go a little bit more smooth. After you have reviewed, and you're the elected official, after you have reviewed the packet and don't have any questions, if you think you have to have questions to discuss it, you can pull it off, which you have done. You've done it this meeting and many other meetings. That's your right, and that's the purpose of it. But with regard to this consent agenda, out of the 11 resolutions, 6 of them were not pulled off. You pulled off 5. So it is working. It's working to speed the process and cull through it. And each of you have that right to pull any resolution off.
Yeah, it was never our process in the past.
It was always the process. I can't tell you how many times
It's not.
it was always the process.
Go back and pull the agenda.
I go for it.
Probably have a difference of opinion
Correct.
as to what was routine and what was.
Correct. I mean, the thing, ultimately, what it comes down to is what's routine for you is different from what's routine. There's no full formal definition of routine because it is different. Everyone has different priorities, especially when there's different political parties. Yes.
I've been here 16 years, and this year is the first time anybody's objected to a professional appointment being on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Greg.
It goes long before me. This is not a new thing for that to be considered routine.
Thank you.
I will just add, if I may, Chair, the appointing of the bond council, it's the same bond council that we've had. The township engineer is the same township engineer that we've had. So
Municipal prosecutor.
They're, municipal prosecutor is the same one we've had, and I believe also the same alternate that we've had. It was.
We've never had an alternate.
Oh, no, okay. I believe it was someone in the same firm. But in any case, so, and it is absolutely a good idea to pull off things that you want to discuss further. That's not an issue at all. I don't object to it in any way. But this is in no way an attempt to bury or hide or package together. And plus, you know what, friends of the committee, you're too smart for that. We're not going to try be able to pull that off, and we know that. And if for no other reason, there's a check. So it makes sense.
And also, I just want to acknowledge Mr. King, did you review the agenda? Because that was one comment that was made, that if you don't review the agenda, just want to make sure you want to clarify that.
Yes, we have a review meeting with the administrator, the clerk, and the mayor. We go over the agenda, we go over the resolutions. This coming Friday, there'll be a meeting where we'll go over it for the next meeting. So we have it for the rest of the.
And the final agenda you review too?
Yes.
Of course.
And, sometimes inevitably, you may have a last minute ad, you try not to do it, but in municipal government, priorities or issues don't wait. Sometimes it happens that, hours before you have to get a resolution on. In that sense, then that probably wouldn't be on the consent agenda. But yes, it is reviewed. It's reviewed by myself, the administrator, the clerk, and the mayor.
Great. All right, is there anybody else on the call?
Yes, next up is Jen McNally.
Hi. Hopefully you can hear me. Jen McNally, Noe Avenue. It was brought up here. I was going to bring up initially about the committees. It's just a huge disappointment. I know you said there's things going on behind the scenes about the citizen volunteer committees. These people worked really hard last year, the Small Business Committee, the Diversity Committee, and the Affordable Housing Committee, and they've been left hanging. They've been left hanging by a group of people who, everyone swears at transparency. So to hear us saying we're behind the scenes, doing things is great, but have we let the people know that we still value their contribution from last year? Have we reached out to them? It seems like we don't really communicate with people to let them know that we valued their time. And what are the costs, the additional costs? We have to have a lawyer to oversee volunteer committees. Yes, there might be some sort of issues, but what is the additional cost of this? We're so cost conscious these days. So the amount of money that we save by having people who are familiar with the affordable housing, the amount of input we got from those people over the last year or even 2 years, I think the cost savings for the town has been enormous. So to see this even in jeopardy is really a shame. And I know the people here have been left hanging. We were supposed to see a presentation by them in the end of December. I know people had prepared presentations and we still don't have a date for that. So could we put a date around that? Maybe we can come up with something for a meeting on a certain date that will have a resolution to this issue, because there are 30 or 40 people throughout the town who have spent countless hours of their time outside of their usual jobs and commitments to do this. So if we could get a date around that, that would be great. And a cost. What is the additional cost to having lawyers involved with our volunteer citizen committees? And again, the second thing I'd like to ask about or comment is, it's already been said, but we're spending thousands of dollars on an AV system. I find it hard to believe that we don't use it for the zoning board, we don't use it for the planning board, that we don't use it for every group that goes on here. So in the transparency seems to be a theme everywhere. For transparency, why aren't we just using, it's a township committee, this is a township committee that we aren't using the same AV that we're paying all this money for, and we got these grants for, to have the planning board. What are we trying to hide? The planning board should be open to everybody. This matters for our town. This matters for the master plan. Everybody should be able to view these meetings. And the third thing that I wanted to bring up was that the word explosion of debt was used earlier today. And the explosion of debt is a misrepresentation. I think we had an explosion of bad planning over the last decade. And this has really led us down the path to incurring more debt because we haven't planned over the last 10 or 15 years. In 2009, a resolution was passed for developer fees. We never collected those developer fees from 2009 to 2019. The developer fees, we built over 300 new houses in Chatham. And these developer fees would have gone towards helping our affordable housing commitments, would have covered some of the costs. So really it's an explosion of bad planning versus an explosion of debt. And finally, we started collecting this money in 2019, and we've collected between $600,000 and $800,000 since then. So imagine if we had collected when the building boom was going on in Chatham, how much money we would have had towards these projects, right? So now we've had 2 affordable housing commitments come up in 2018, and now the most recent one at Charlie Brown's. And because of our lack of planning, our lack of using resources, maybe our lack of having an affordable housing citizen committee a few years ago, we really got backed into a hole. And we got backed into a hole that we had to pay a premium price for a piece of property. So when you look at this as not an explosion of debt, it's an explosion of bad planning coming to a head. And so the lack of planning has really left us in this situation. So not really the last 2 years. And to say this over the last 2 years is really, it's really disheartening to hear that would come up. And finally, I thought was interesting in the agenda for tonight, there's the resolution about masking. And you quoted Morris County. That's already came up again before. I happen to know you quoted Morris County in the resolution. And I reached out to the health officer for Chatham Township earlier. And this was the first time he was hearing of this. So we had a nice conversation there. So hopefully he reached out to you all. So I think it's interesting. We quote Morris County, but yet we have a contract with the Bloomfield Health Department about our health. So we can't really have it. We have it both ways, right? It doesn't work that way. And he really wasn't aware of this resolution. So I find it to be very interesting. And I find that, the committee has responsibility. We have volunteer fire department. We have a volunteer EMS staff. And we have senior citizens who come downstairs, as somebody mentioned.
Yeah, we reached our limit. Is there anybody else?
Yes, Jessica Romeo.
Hi, thanks, Greg. Jessica Romeo on Pine Street. I know you guys talked earlier about the environmental commission meetings. I think that could and should be posted on the website. There is a year schedule already set up, and the environmental commission chair had shared the Zoom link for each meeting already. So I would think that could be posted easily. If you need to reach out to Rez again, but she did send that last month in an email to everybody. I wanted to publicly thank Rich Young from DPW. He spent some time meeting with my daughter who's working on a silver award for Girl Scouts, and he was incredibly gracious and helpful and an amazing resource. And so I did want to just call that out. Thank you. I see that Colony is on the agenda for tonight, and I briefly wanted to touch upon some misinformation shared last summer fall about the history of Colony. So it was claimed that between 2013 and 2014, Colony Pool suffered a, quote, collapse in membership. I think the numbers used were exactly from 916 down to 221. And that simply just is not true. From the audited township budget reports on the township website and filed with the state, 2013 Colony membership and dues revenue was reported as $170,939. 2014 membership revenue and dues was reported as $181,086. Between 2013 and 2014, a family membership was increased by only $50 from $425 to $475. So this uptick in revenue over that year period is an indicator of growth. I just wanted to make sure that we're all sharing accurate information. So, it was just something bothering me. I wanted to bring that up. Thanks. That's all.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Last one is phone number ending in 7778.
Oh, Mr. Carr.
Good evening. This is Stuart Carr from 3 Crestwood Drive in Chatham Township. 4 items tonight, kind of piggybacking on some of the other comments with respect to transparency. Item number 1, and this again is one of the reasons for looking for 2 of the public comment periods during a meeting. Hopefully we're going to be having a conversation about that. I asked last week if we could re-engage in that conversation, didn't get a response, so I had to wait 2 weeks to again ask that. If we could check on the idea of getting back to 2 public comment periods during the meeting, that would be appreciated. Number 2 issue on the Zoom platform. One of the few good things, again, that we said the other night about coming out or having the COVID activity was to see that there is, in fact, technology to enable Zoom and to enable remote meetings and to enable literally an explosion, speaking of explosion, an explosion in participation by the public. And hopefully going forward, we will continue with best practice, not only at the committee level, but also planning board, zoning board of adjustment, and the whole group of having this remote access. Mr. Hamilton obviously took advantage of that. Again, thank you, Mr. Hamilton, for doing that and taking your time when he was in London a couple of weeks. But for this kind of remote capability, we wouldn't be able to have to do that. So having that in the public domain, in addition to the actual council members and planning board members, et cetera, I think would be appreciated. So if we could have some discussion on that and having a best practice initiated and put into codified form to make this going forward, definitely would be sincerely appreciated. Number 3 item on to the CAG meeting of the other day and Mr. Hamilton's comment about the memorandum of understanding. Again, I want to double check with Mr. King and see if we did check with Mr. Woodward and the other folks about literally rescinding that letter from December of 2019, which again firmly supported option 3 or scenario 3, whatever it was called, because again, that is distinctly different from what was in the MOU, and we want to make sure that doesn't come back to bite. So I'd like to know whether we have had any feedback from Councilor Woodward about sending out a specific rescission letter relative to that December 2019 letter sent by, I think, signed by Mr. Hoffman to the Region 2 EPA. And then finally, a smaller item for Mr. Hoffman, Oak Knoll School, here we go again. And we check with Ms. What's her name, Carol Nauta down in Chatham Borough about getting on the list to get some Chatham recreation teams using the Oak Knoll field so we can establish a precedent of township and borough kids when the fields are open, actually using those fields per the agreement that we agreed to back in 2005 or so and was re-upped a couple of years ago. So I would like to hear Mr. Hoffman give us an update on whether we're going to be talking to Ms. Nauta and what the timing is for getting some rec teams on those fields, again, so we can get that precedent reestablished. Again, thanks for your time and look forward to your responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Bob, do you want to comment there?
Thank you, Mayor. Last year, Oak Knolls was contacted. The soccer clubs were looking for some space, but then they were able to use another field, so they didn't have to use the Oak Knoll field. This is something that's on our radar, and we can contact Oak Knoll, but it's basically they're looking for the types of sports and what would be needed over the summer. But to answer Mr. Carr's question, yes, we can reach out to them, and that's something that's a scheduling question for the rec committee or for the teams.
So just following up on that with the rec, I can assure Mr. Carr that the rec committee constituents have asked that question about Oak Knoll fields, the process for using them, when we're allowed to use them, and also who has used them in the past, sort of the whole list of the gamut of questions that you would want to know about Oak Knoll field. And we have asked them, actually didn't come from me, but it was one of the people on the rec committee, and it's gone out via email. It's been asked directly of Ms. Nauta, and we're hoping to get a response, but that's where that exists. The will exists. The answers have not come to us yet. I hope they will evade us too much longer.
If I could just chime in on that one, not on the rec committee, but just more generally speaking, I'm with Mr. Carr on this one, that it's not really, in my view, a question of it turned out that they didn't need it or something like that. And when you have an agreement like that, I would view that as a valuable asset that you never know when you might need it. And it's something that we're entitled to, and we have an agreement with Oak Knoll. And it's one of these, use it or lose it type situations. You sign an agreement in 2005, and then you don't exercise your rights under that agreement for 15 years. Then all of a sudden, time comes when you really need it, and then all of a sudden there's some murkiness or course of dealing, as we say in the legal business or something like, oh, I didn't know we were still doing that. So if we have the ability to and the right to utilize those facilities, I think we should be going out of our way to do so. Just to set the precedent, make sure where it's established.
Just as a point of clarification, I wasn't aware that there was something going back to 2005. I know that this came up through the planning board And that's where I was aware of it. It was in 2020 or 2019 or 2020 where they addressed the planning board, and this is where I was aware that it came up, that there was an agreement for rec teams to use their fields when they weren't using it.
That agreement had been in place from way back when Oklahoma was established, and to Mr. Carr's credit, he did push to tighten that language when they came to the planning board because they wanted additional hours for usage. So that was part of, he kind of pushed that language more, which was great. So it is improved language, but I agree, it is good to get on the field if you can.
Mr. Carr also asked about two more questions. One was about Rolling Knoll, and the other one was about when the second public hearing. That's something, second public hearing may be something we would take up again with, well, I would like to see us maybe take it up again when we revisit the bylaws. However, I will say that that was unanimously passed by this dais of people in agreement that we should have one public hearing, and that's what we have, and it seems to be working at this point. It also seems to be to me that people that call in are very interested in the township committee, and I encourage that, of course, myself participating here. But we have a $10.6 million in tax revenue that come to us, roughly $17 million budget overall. School district has a $70 million budget or more. The school district has Zoom access, has YouTube access, but no calling, and only in person asking questions and attendance. So it seems to me that there's a bit of incongruence here about expectation of participation. We have remote participation, and a board with a board that meets with 7 times our budget doesn't.
Well, and also with the planning board and the zoning board, those are independent bodies. My understanding with the planning board is that it's still being zoomed on, so people can watch it remotely. They just can't participate as in ask a question. And the planning board, it's pretty rare that they have a public comment section. That was my understanding. That it's still, I don't believe that's wrong. I'm telling you, I don't believe that's wrong. So, no.
Mayor, if I could.
This is inappropriate.
If I could just
Yes.
address the issue with the Zoom, that was born out of COVID. Once which is coming soon, once that executive order is over, theoretically, the Zoom process is going to be over as well. There could be legislative changes in how meetings can be held, and maybe there's going to be legislation that allows you to have Zoom participation. But prior to COVID, you didn't have that participation. You could have a council person or a committee person or an elected official call in for a special reason if they could make it, but the public could not call in. The public had to be at a meeting. This meeting, I believe, was televised, and you will have that ability, and that's what that grant really is for. So you have the ability to transmit these meetings to the public. So there's a little misunderstanding about Zoom and the law. So I just want to clarify that.
Thank you.
With regard to Rolling Knolls, I did discuss the matter with Carl Woodward. I don't want to go into detail with it because it's legal strategy. The other issue is I understand that people want to have trails there, but it just depends on who's going to own that property. If it's not turned over to either a public entity or some other form, you may not be able to get trails through. So.
Thank you.
Can I ask more, why did you say that we voted unanimously with just the one session? Because I don't think Stacy and I voted.
You did.
We should check your voting record.
The bylaws were passed in your list.
It was in the bylaws.
And that was discussed.
No, it was discussed. But either way, so back to the planning board and the zoning board, my understanding is still broadcasts. I don't know if they decide what they want to do, that's individual boards. There's not, we can give our opinions at those boards, the ones that we sit on, that's really about it. I think the value of being in person is significant. And that's it. All right, is there anybody else?
No, we're done.
Okay, so then now we can close the public hearing of citizens and move on to the consent agenda. So can I get a motion to adopt the consent agenda from items 1 through 6?
Second.
Okay, is there a roll call?
Mrs. Ewald,
Yes.
Mrs. Vandaco,
Yes.
Mr. Lotus,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton,
Yes.
and Mayor Felice.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, can I get, so then I get a motion to adopt resolution 73 mask optional policy? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a discussion?
Yeah. So I asked to have this pulled out. I don't disagree that we could lift the mask mandate in this building. I do prefer the March 7th date, like Mr. Kelly had mentioned. The vaccination rates are way up in the township and the cases are way down. So I can appreciate everybody's tired of masks. I can appreciate shedding our masks. The part that I really have a problem with is the paragraph that says that the township, that no person, employee, volunteer, or organization may require a mandate or otherwise force face masks to be worn when entering the municipal building or any township-owned property. I think that is hugely short-sighted. We have our most vulnerable population downstairs, our senior center, and requiring masks is the difference between them actually being able to participate in activities or having to do that from home, and isolation has its own ramifications for our senior population. I also have big concerns. I was here in 2020 when we had to deal with COVID, and we had real issues that our police, whether or not we were able to staff the police because of something, or our emergency medical service workers, because they're dealing with vulnerable populations. And then if they're transmitting virus within their ranks, then you don't have a population. So I guess my question is, were any of these, was this vetted with the Department of Health? Was it vetted with the senior center? Was it vetted with our police chief or fire department chief? Or who else was there? The EMS. There's a whole bunch of populations that are affected. I think they need to have the flexibility in order to run their organizations. We could be looking at there's discussion about a sub-variant. We all want to learn how to live with this, but at the same time, we got to keep people safe as well. So I think this absolute section here, there's no way I'm voting for this without it.
Yeah. So I just want to say one thing, the senior center is mask optional and has been mask optional. But this doesn't say that. It doesn't need to.
I was just saying, I think if I heard you correctly, I think you said you were in favor of listing the mask mandate in this building. There is no mask mandate in this building. There's no mask mandate in senior centers. The senior center has been operating on a mask optional basis for quite some time now. And I understand vulnerable populations, and in particular members of vulnerable populations who likely prefer to wear a mask. And we're not saying, we're not discouraging anybody from wearing a mask at all. It's a matter of choice. And if people feel more comfortable being masked, and that's by them. That is really the way it is. I mean, the real purpose of this is to sort of codify, as of this moment, what is more or less effectively already the rule. You know, that there is no mask mandate in Chatham Township as far as in this building or our parks, or ball fields and things that we control. And that's really it, is to make it clear that that is the state right, for the very reason that you just said. People seem to have a misconception about what the current status is, and frankly, you know, people have pretty strident views on this thing, obviously, and what we're trying to avoid is a situation where somebody somewhere at Nash Field or Castle Park or whatever, tell somebody that they have to put a mask on. Because that's not the law right now. And we just want to make sure that it's perfectly clear that that is not the law in Chatham Township.
That doesn't seem to be written very well, though, because I'm thinking about my art group that comes in here. We ask that they all wear masks. They can't come in unless they wear them. And it says here that no organization can ask people to mandate to wear a mask, and that we do, or else they can't come in.
Was there any resolution or ordinance passed that you had to wear a mask in any municipal building?
No.
So then you really can't do that. You don't have the authority. When the governor passed his executive order, it required it, compelled it. That if you can remember, people during the peak of COVID would go to the parks, and actually municipalities closed the parks and you had to walk around outside with a mask. That has been lifted. The only place that you have to right now wear a mask is in schools, but again, as everyone has heard, that's going to be lifted on the 7th. The airports and federal buildings still require it, but it's not compelled locally. This only covers municipal properties, which are again the parks, which you can have a mask if you want. It leaves it to the individual's discretion, but it doesn't compel it. The building here doesn't compel it. You look behind, you have half the people not wearing a mask. When I was down with Bob to the senior center one time, there's about 10 seniors. They were about 8 feet, and they had masks, and it was their option. So I think the seniors are smart enough, and I give them credit. There's some seniors that will wear it, and the seniors that I saw had those masks on. So I think, again, giving people due credit of what they need is given into this resolution.
So why do we need this resolution? Why can't we just do what?
Because obviously there's a misunderstanding.
Right.
With all due respect, last year, my friend, you can't tell people that they can't come to the art league without a mask on.
Well, if they want to come to our reception, we want them to wear a mask.
Well, then you should tell them, we would really, really, really like you to wear a mask. And we
You
would
can
appreciate
encourage it.
And that
We're
would
just
be
not
the
requiring
official
it.
position of the art league is we would like people to wear a mask. But that's really the point, is the time has come that you can't, at least from my perspective, if we're gonna vote on this, but from my perspective, that's exactly what it means. People can't order people to put a mask on against their will.
All right, so then let's just go with what the governor says and do it all on March 7th.
Well, March 7th is for the schools. So like I said, like we was already addressed, that for government buildings and everything, there isn't a mandate already in place. It's really per town how they want to do it. So March 7th date is for the schools. My attitude of it is that simply I think it's a personal choice. I say that, there has to be some personal responsibility here, in that I don't think it's the government, a government body like ourselves, responsibility to decide your personal health problem, how you want to take care of your health. I don't know your individual health, nor would I ever assume to know your health. But putting on a mask and requiring a mask is a personal, I think it should be a health decision that you as a person make, and it should not be left to a government body. I think it's just.
Well, then you're making it a government body by making.
No, I'm just saying, no, I'm not I'm saying that there's.
Anybody who wants to wear a mask, anywhere, anytime, any place.
You can wear 5 masks, you can wear 10 masks, you can wear as many masks as you want. It's 100% just, you decide for yourself, and you're not allowed to force somebody else to, because unless if it's your own family in your own household, but again, that's an issue where it's a personal discussion in your household. But to require other people in government buildings, I do not believe is appropriate, and I think we have to move on with our lives. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's not just the art league indoors that's asking people to wear a mask or requiring people to wear masks where they don't want to, or where it's becoming forced situation. It's also outdoors. So in our parks, I have a resident who has a son who's received a letter saying that they will have to wear masks in a dugout when they're playing baseball. They won't have to wear a mask. And then we were given reason that something about being 3 feet apart, even though you're outdoors, you're not more than 3 feet apart, so then there's tracking that goes with that. There's a lot of confusion, and I think this resolution helps to eliminate the confusion that children will not be outdoors in Chatham Township and required by any organization, any person, any employee, any volunteer, or anyone to wear a face mask if they don't want to. If they do want to, their family wants them to do it, and it's their own choice, go with God, please. Do what makes it's good for you and your family. But no organization should come in and force that in the grounds and property that we have control over.
And just to be clear, this is the current state of play. If a variant or whatever comes back, and for example, the governor has already announced that the executive order in this regard is going to expire on March 7th. Personally, and at some point there is going to be a political debate and we're going to vote. You know, personally, I just am incapable of comprehending why there's going to be less COVID on March 7th than there is today. And that's how I feel about it. It's a nonsensical thing. That's just my political opinion.
And we also.
But let me say, if a legitimate state of emergency should arise again, and the governor should issue an executive order like the one that was issued in March 2020, that would supersede this. You know, you couldn't point to this resolution and say, oh, no, we're not going to do that. You know, that this is specific to this governing body.
Yes, a state, a governor's executive order will supersede ours. Anyway, but this is for our purposes. Let's go over.
Oh, no, I wanted to make another comment, a direct comment. Again, nobody objects to a clarification. Nobody objects to allowing, flexibility and your personal option. The problem I have is this language, and you're an attorney and you're an attorney, the language in this 4th paragraph specifically says that nobody can set any, require any masking going forward. And I think that's a mistake. I think we need to allow our police department, our senior center to have flexibility to be able to manage their populations and to be able to run what they're doing. So I'm not comfortable with that paragraph.
But this board governs governmental property. No one else does. The 5 of you do. And if you're giving your authority over to someone else, that's not legitimate. You have to make that decision.
Why do you want to make it the government? I just think on all township property, we should not be named. I think it should be a personal decision. And I think it's been clear that we've been monitoring the hospitalizations and the instant, COVID transmission rates. We have, such a high percentage of the population that have been vaccinated. There are therapeutics out now. There are various different treatments options now. We're in a completely different situation now than we were. And I think now we need to come to a point where we can get back to normal. And so that's what this.
The other thing too, if you go to the grocery store, they don't even mandate masks. So you can go into a grocery store without a mask, but somehow in your parks, in these buildings here, you have to wear a mask. It really makes no sense. But again, the 5 of you are the ones who control that property and can either pass the resolution or not.
Good way to put it. If somebody has a compelling reason as to why there should be a mask mandate, not an option, not a we strongly encourage you, we want everybody, we would like people to wear masks. If for some reason a mandate requiring masking on Chatham Township property is required, we should be the ones making that decision, and somebody should come to us and say that that is necessary and appropriate, and this is why, I spell it out. But in my opinion, that is not necessary or appropriate right now. And so we need to make it clear that people can't be going around, frankly, in Mr. Lois's very apt, non-hypothetical scenario, ordering kids to put masks on.
All right, can we go to a vote?
Mrs. Yule,
No.
Mrs. Finacco,
No.
Mr. Lois,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton,
Yes.
and Mayor Please.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, resolution 74, appointing bond counsel. What did you want to discuss?
Okay. Well, two things. No. Well, so that's, Mr. Lois, and you had a good point. I did ask the mayor to separate out the resolutions for the reappointment, because the reappointments have always been a routine matter. You already have a body of experience with that person. We have recommendations. We know how much they cost. I wanted that split out on the resolution, because that to me is a wholly different process than vetting new vendors that we're going to have. And then in terms of the, I got so many notes on this thing. In terms of the process for the bond counsel, so I'm okay with. I'm okay with reappointing. We're in the middle of doing a bond issue, so that makes the most sense, and we have a lot of experience. I'm okay with reappointing Mr. The Broger McCarthy. Is that it? Oh, here's my notes. Sorry.
It's Steve Rover.
Steve Broger, sorry.
No, you got it.
Okay, here we go. Broger McCarthy. That's right. That's the name of the firm. But we have, on this one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 firms that applied. The pricing was pretty similar. Again, I'm wondering who's making the recommendation for the backup as McManaman, Scotland, and Bowman, because that was the one that was selected.
So essentially, there were 64 different qualification packets that came in across the board. I opened them with Bob and Greg and Megan, and I also got a copy of all of them onto a flash drive so that I could take home and review and read them all painstakingly, and went through one by one. I discussed it with a couple of the other committee members and spoke with some of them, and it was very simple.
I'm sorry, I spoke to a couple of the committee members.
Yes.
Speak to a couple of the committee members. That's against the, we have to do everything in public meetings.
Well, I spoke to them separately. I'm allowed to speak to Mr. Hamilton one-on-one.
Okay,
Anytime,
so
I'm allowed to speak to Mr. Lois one-on-one. We did not have any type of meeting with request by any means.
so you could say came to some consensus as to who you wanted to choose.
Separately, I spoke to each one of them.
Okay, so I'll ask each of you. Why did you pick McManaman, Scotland, and Bowman over the other? They all have great qualifications. I'm not necessarily objecting. I'm trying to find out because you're recommending this person as the alternate, and I'm trying to find out why. When I look at
one thing I want to avoid doing, though, is I think we were really lucky this time where we were able to get 64 different qualification packets. If we start trashing or any way saying negative things about people, firms publicly, I think it will come back to where nobody will want to submit a qualification package. So we really need to be cautious on that. So that's just the one thing I do want to be cautious of.
We had a model for this at the end of last year. We issued an RFQ for a planner, and we all agreed on a process that was very sound. There was a
I didn't
subcommittee.
agree to that.
There was a subcommittee that you moved along the process by asking things. You moved along the process. You received.
Process appeared in front of us.
We never were discussing this process.
You advanced the process by asking for interviews. You didn't ask. Well, let me just go through the process. We had 9.
This is a process that you and former Deputy Mayor Kathy Abbott and Celeste decided on. So this is not unusual.
The process was driven by the administrator to keep it apolitical. And he did it based on what his experience was with requests for qualifications. But again, we got in 9 applications. They came up with this. It was Mr. Hoffman. It was our planning board chair and it was, who's the person? Frank Banish, the planner, all the way from the committee. They looked through, they had a series of criteria, they sent all of us a spreadsheet, not with just prices, but with a series of criteria that they evaluated to narrow down to 3, and then brought
Chairman,
those.
this is not regarding this resolution. Can we please discuss this resolution?
This is the thing, there are currently 64 qualification packets. Anybody on this committee has access to them. They can seek them, they can schedule meetings with these people, they have free access to interview them one-on-one if they want to. They can do, that's fine, go for it. I encourage you to do that, go for it. I've done it. That's what processes are in place. I don't see why we need a separate subcommittee to do that when we are the ones who are making the decision. So I don't see a point in that.
I don't necessarily have expertise on selecting bond counsel, so that's why I'm asking, you were comfortable selecting bond counsel, why did you choose this one over the other 5? That's the
Based off
question.
of qualifications and phone calls, essentially.
Your planner, the planning board planner didn't either when he did it the last time.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
So you said the process before was the administrator, the planning board, planner, and who else from the planning board?
The planning board chair.
Chairman. I'm sure that those 2 out of those 3 people did not ever hire a bond counsel.
Yeah, we're talking about 2
I
different.
don't understand relevance to bond counsel.
But even still, when they chose their 3, there was no specific process. We never heard a reason why they chose those 3 compared to instead of the other 6. But we weren't going to sit there in any way.
Sorry, point of order, we're not, this is the resolution, the motion before us, is whether or not to pass this resolution. If you'd like to discuss this resolution,
Yes.
not the process of what the planning board did, or how a planner was possibly selected for a project that did not happen.
Well, the one thing I just want to make clear is that this is what's being done through all the appointments, because I have a feeling that this is going to be the same issue that's brought up on each one. Essentially, this is what happened with all of them. You know, there's 64 qualification packets. Each qualification packet is probably 35 to 50 pages each to read through and sift through. It's a lot of pages. Everybody has access to them. Everybody can are on the committee. This is not fully public because there's proprietary confidential information in there. But there is, the entire committee has access to this information. You can go, sit down, take a look at them physically, get it on a flash drive, take a look at them, call them up, ask them questions, say we're voting on a resolution, your name's on it. I would just have a couple questions for you. I would encourage you all to do that. I don't have a problem with that.
Can I just say,
I just want to make a point that the mayor touched on a little bit earlier, I think, which is, in my view at least, there's a significant difference between, potential entering into a consulting arrangement with a consultant and retaining counsel, which by definition has highly sensitive, privileged, and confidential aspects of it. Now, I'm not going to talk about, discussions associated with the retention of counsel, but that's something for executive session, and it is what it is. But to Mr. Lois's point, the agenda has been out for a while right now. Everybody had access to this information, and rather than, going down this road, I think we have a resolution before us. We're being asked to vote on it, and I guess my question would be, have you conducted some sort of investigation into the McMahon firm, and did you have a problem with them that you want to raise?
No, as a matter of fact, in this case, it was more so that they were all highly competitive from what I looked at, because I did go through the documents. I asked our administrator, given his 3 decades of experience, who he recommends, 3+ decades, and whether or not he had reached out to his counterparts in other towns to find out what they recommend. Speaking of which, I don't know if anybody reached out to the other towns to get their recommendation.
What other towns?
But in this case,
What other towns are we asking?
ask anybody that any of the people they work with.
Oh.
Home next door.
Right,
Who do
right.
you work with and how do you like them?
Right.
So again, it came down to the point where this was recommended by the mayor, and I just wanted to find out why you were recommending this one over the rest of them.
All right, can we
Okay,
go
let's
for
go back to, I said,
Need
Mr.
a
Hoffman,
motion
do
in
you
a
have
second
any,
first.
motion to adopt?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Vote. Mrs. Ewell,
yes.
Mrs. Frondako?
Yeah.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton?
Yes.
And Mayor Felice?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next is resolution 75 for appointing municipal engineer. Is there a discussion?
I make a motion to split out the, Martin McDonald, the reappointment from the rest of the appointments.
All right, let's vote.
Doug, is there any discussion? Right, I should explain.
Is there a discussion?
Yeah, going back to what I said before, reappointments should be separate from the new vendors.
Is there, can we vote?
Mrs. Ewell?
What are we voting
She's
on?
voting on
This is to
separating the.
Separate out the appointment from pre-qualifying.
It means two separate resolutions, one for Mont McDonald and one.
You know what, Mr. King, can you explain the resolution in a little bit?
Yes, the purpose of these resolutions were to appoint, you have a current engineer. So you're appointing a second person, I guess, to back him up, and then you have 3 other firms who are pre-qualified. So if there's a certain project that their firm would be better able to do, you would bring them up. And in fact, by doing a pre-qualification, every time there is a new project, instead of the in-house engineer doing it without any oversight or coming back before this board, when you pull someone from the pre-qualification, you do a resolution for them for that specific project for not to exceed numbers, so you have a better qualification, you have a better process. It goes again before the board, the public sees it. Quite frankly, it's more transparent. I was somewhat taken aback by some of the comments where people were saying that it's not transparent, but that's probably one of the more transparent ways to do it, because each thing is parceled out, each thing can be discussed, each thing can be tracked differently. When you lump everything together, it's difficult. It's an accounting nightmare to know what line item is for what project. And I think it's probably more difficult for the township administrator or the township administrator to follow all that. So I think it is a more transparent way to do it.
Plus, this was already voted on and approved
That's right.
unanimously to pre-qualify attorneys and professionals.
Yeah, I disagree with that. Again, the reappointment is a whole, and we originally received it, which is what drew my attention. We originally received them separated. The first draft we got was a reappointment draft, and then we got an appointment of the new selection. So again, given the new
Let's
selection.
vote on, there's a motion in the second to split it up. Can we vote on that?
Mrs. Ewell?
Yes.
Mrs. Frondako?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
No.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton?
No.
Mayor Felice?
No. Okay,
Motion fails.
essentially, I don't see a point in
So I
separating.
move to adopt resolution 2022-075.
Okay, is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Okay. Any additional discussion, or is this pretty much the same that was already addressed?
No, right, different things to say. Mont McDonald, this is the one case where I got calls from people telling us to keep John Rushdie and Mont McDonald. He's an encyclopedia of knowledge regarding the township and a rainmaker when it comes to grants. So I heartily endorse bringing back Mont McDonald. Boswell Engineering, I understand that their recommendation came for administrator, and their packet, same thing, is very impressive, and they're well known in the industry as well. Mr. Hoffman, your feedback on a GPI, because one of the GPI was one of them that was selected.
I think this is inappropriate.
I really don't want to say anything negative about anybody, publicly, professional, so.
You had no problem last year when you were vetting volunteers and companies. You had no
That was
problem
in an
last year.
executive session.
No, you did it in public session.
I did not comment on, I did not say anything negative about professional staff last year. Maybe. That's not true. Excuse me, this is inappropriate.
Well, then Mr. Hoffman, did you figure out how he's gonna answer his question? Because the question is, what is his recommendation? Let me rephrase. What is your recommendation based on your experience and your communication with your other administrators?
Mont McDonald, that's absolutely, I've worked with Boswell Engineering before, and we have, GPI is here working on safe routes to schools. They have two grants that, two projects that they're working on, and they're on our list, and they should continue to work on those projects with the state DOT. Those two projects have deadlines that are coming up. So you know, we have two other backups, so that we
Also, you know, we are doing some big projects coming up. We have the roof that we need to replace on this building, and there are certain aspects to that I think would be great to have the ease to be able to call up somebody who's already being pre-qualified. Hey, we need a second price for this. Hey, we need a second opinion on how we want to go out to bid. And it doesn't have to become a very burdensome process where it's like, okay, we have to put this on the next agenda. We have to we're pre-qualifying them so that we can easily ask them, hey, can you give us a bid or a quote on this?
right, and 3 out of the 4 engineers have roofing experience. So
Perfect, you know,
Which of
so
the 3 out of the 4 engineers have roofing experience?
I know, I suppose,
well, Mont McDonald, Remington Barrick, and Boswell Engineering.
yeah.
John McDonald, Remington, Barrick, and Boswell.
Yes.
And GPI
I
is
spoke
already
to
doing
the
residential.
Remington
And
Barrick.
GPI, we already have a relationship with.
Yes, the GPI's been doing safe streets, which is dragged on, and they're hard to get dragged
Again,
on.
so, and I have personally spoken with roofing specialists at Remington Barrick. So these conversations have occurred. All right, can we call for a vote?
Mrs. Ewell,
Yes.
Mrs. Madako,
Yeah.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton,
Yes.
Mayor Felice.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, resolution number 76, appointing the municipal prosecutor and alternate prosecutor. So this is, yeah, can I get a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, and discussion, you want to pull it out?
Yes.
Our municipal prosecutor is being reappointed, and then there was one other, person.
How and how, or how?
Yeah, there was basically 2 people that submitted qualifications for a municipal prosecutor. Essentially, we're reappointing one of them, and then the second one, we're appointing as our alternate in case we need someone. It was very simple.
Yeah, the Different Insurance Code Bateman has a deep bench when I read their materials of prosecutors. So I don't think there's any need. I was frankly astonished at how and how was added to this thing. First of all, Tim Howe is a Somerset County
Okay, again,
Republican
we're
chair.
not sitting there
He has-
trashing people.
He has only 5 years.
All right, we're going to a vote then. We're going to do
Can I
that.
say one thing?
Yes, this is inappropriate, and we're going to call for a vote.
He was a prosecutor 20 years ago.
He put in a qualification.
With,
He put in a
I
qualification.
don't put in a qualification.
But you're not an attorney.
with,
Can we vote for a vote? Sorry, Mr. King, please respond.
with regard to if there's if a prosecutor is disqualified, then his whole firm would be disqualified. So it's incumbent to have another a backup.
Thank you. Let's go to a vote.
Mrs. Ewell,
How did we do it before? Hold on a second.
We didn't have an alternate.
We
before.
had an alternate. It's, he's on the resolution.
Mr. King,
we
can you
passed.
please explain that? Because I don't follow, and I would love to understand exactly what that
Because
is.
you could have
Break it down very slowly.
did the alternates assessed.
I don't know about municipal
So-
prosecution and disqualifications of attorneys, and then therefore their whole.
Yeah, many times, especially in a big firm, they've represented private people so they could represent a family member of a company, a firm. And if there's a disqualification, instead of having to move that case out to another court, you just bring in the alternate prosecutor. And that's the, that's I believe what you're trying to do.
And we already have an alternate prosecutor.
We do not. We do not have.
He's
an
on the
alternate.
original resolution.
I'm telling you, we have, no, we don't.
Even another individual, I
When
think
we
Francesca
appointed,
Bateman.
Right,
But
but again, if that wasn't happening.
If they didn't send in an RFP, I mean, these are the two people that you have.
I believe the alternate was with the same firm as Mr. Dorsey. I think they were both with Francesca Bateman.
Correct. We had two people, ultimately, we had two people that submitted qualifications for our municipal prosecutor. We reappointed the one who has been our municipal prosecutor. The second one, we named as an alternate. That's it.
The alternate we had, we never had a problem with.
Okay, well, we're gonna go to a vote now.
Well, no, I don't-
You formulated your opinion, and I think it's wildly inappropriate to be trashy.
But I think it's important to clarify for the public the frankly correction or improvement that's being made here. I understand in the past, we had Mr. Corsi and an alternate from Dorsey, from his firm. And that could mean, for example, if he's on vacation, when his court's scheduled to be in session, or he's not around, the alternate could appear. But in the scenario that Mr. King highlighted, where there was a conflict, disqualification, where a client of Francesco Bateman, of the Francesco Bateman firm, gets himself into trouble with municipal prosecution, and all attorneys from that firm would have to be disqualified. And so this gives us an out where we have somebody who wouldn't be disqualified.
Yeah, and I don't think this person's qualified.
In that unlikely circumstance. Okay.
All right, we're going to a vote. You're entitled to that opinion. You can vote no, that's how.
A vote's been called for. Let's have the vote, please. Thank you, Mrs. Ewell.
No.
Mrs. Fundaco.
No.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton.
Yes.
Mayor Fleece.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next item is resolution 77, appointing affordable, or I guess this is pre-qualifying attorneys for affordable housing service. Is there a motion to adopt?
I move that we adopt resolution 20.
Is there a second? Okay, discussion.
Some materials I looked at and everything I heard, that's Serenitas, I don't even know if that's.
Serenita's.
Very impressive, so I was pleased to have them in the grouping. Dakotas, we have some experience with, and Mr. Hoffman comes, gives him good referrals, gives that company good referrals, so good there. Savile Shock, when I was looking at their materials, great generalist. Would have been nice for him to apply for some in some other places, but they didn't provide any affordable housing information. I think we're fine with just two of them. So in terms of the others, maybe Wiener probably would come. I thought it was had more qualifications, but that would be my recommendation.
All right, can we go to a vote?
Mrs. Ewell.
Yes.
And this is to amend, or is this just?
No, this is a
Motion is to adopt.
motion to adopt.
Yes.
Mrs. Fundaco.
Yeah.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton.
Yeah.
And Mayor Fleece.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, I think we are done with our resolutions. Now we have a discussion item. Correct? The maintenance appeal, sorry. This, yes, the maintenance appeal. Basically, this has come to our attention. I know this is brought up to me many times that our fields are not being adequately maintained. And I know you had some discussions with this as well. Do you want to start off?
Sure. So I'm part of the rec committee, and it's come up in the rec committee, but it didn't just come up not most recently. I was looking through the meeting minutes of the recreation committee, and it's come up many times. The quality and the maintenance of the fields, specifically Nashville, the quality of the baseball field there is not good in terms of not the diamond itself and grading that's done, because our club very generously provides professional and private grading for those fields. But it's for the grass itself. It's the quality of the grass and the amount of weeds that are in the grass. I've had calls from baseball specifically about, how the ball rolls and the quality of the field. Additionally, for the recreation, you'll find, going back for many years, discussions about the quality of the field at Esternay. Unfortunately, Esternay's had to be closed for the entire month of, for the entire fall season at times, because the quality of the field is so poor that it's starting to be unplayable. So we have some serious field issues. Right, I believe I have some photos that I sent you, some slides of some different situations. So this first one here is the diamond, the baseball field and diamond here at the Municipal Center called the Mountain View. It hasn't been used for many years, and it's out of rotation, so it's not an option for play. And the reason for that is both ground nested wasps that kill bees that are living in the dirt and the sand there. So the ground nested wasps, and then also the quality of the field itself. The diamond is quite cracked out. And, it's not in good condition, and the grass in the area is not suitable for play. We do need to do some things with moving those small bleacher stand and whatnot. This is not a high school level field, but it would be very useful for a certain T-ball, 5th grade, 6th grade, something like, or maybe not 6th grade, but through 5th grade, this would possibly be a useful field. Can we go to the next page, please? Yep, this is Mountain View again. We can move on to the next one. This is another aspect of our recreation facilities. This is the Common Recreation Center, rather, the courts there. So we have several courts, and the quality of the pavement, you can see the cracking there. The nets themselves hold well. The courts are relatively flat and without puddling or mounding, but there is cracking that needs to be filled and patched and hopefully repainted. Greg, can you go through these, because there's several of the tennis courts here. It's not just one court or one area it's throughout. And then
These courts, I think it's important to acknowledge that they're revenue generating.
Well, they are revenue generating in that if you belong to Colony, you have priority on the court, but these are entirely public courts, part of our open space, and there is no fee to use these courts. But it is prioritized for, except for 2 courts, they are prioritized for Colony members in the summer, and they're part of the Colony Recreation Center. Now they're completely free and completely open for use outside of those 3 months, and they are used by the varsity tennis team for practice. And you'll see these courts are very, very active in their use. Courts, and then the last thing I have on here, I believe, is Esternay. That shows Esternay locked, and then the next one is sort of a close up of the padlock there. That's the state that we find Esternay in all the time, and it's for several reasons. Sometimes it's closed for the summer, sometimes it's closed because of field conditions, and then it's also closed because of our inability to, I don't know about our inability, but it's certainly our need to monitor the park so that it's safe and not a place where people are congregating. So that's an issue there.
There's also a bear in the neighborhood.
Is there? Yeah. So I believe that's it, correct? That 11.
There's for some reason we're still
And then I put in this also school district of the Chathams. That's the baseball diamond at SBS. And unfortunately, my older son's 10. And he used to play t-ball there. And the court and the field was in decent condition. So he's 10. So that was only 5 years ago, 4 years ago. And that's a shot of SBS from this summer. So besides addressing our own fields and those that we have control over, We need to do something also to encourage the school district of the Chathams to adequately maintain their own fields, because our residents shouldn't know or have to know the difference between municipal fields and those fields that were given to the school district many years ago. They should be in reasonable condition for use, and that's, in my estimation, not a reasonable condition.
So,
It also demonstrates what happens if you don't take care of it, they go downhill.
yeah.
So what do you propose?
I know that there's been discussion, I know I've spoken to our DPW about this, as well as a few other people, of like, well, just what can we do? And do you have any input there, what we can do? I know there were suggestions about various changing or figuring out some sort of treatments where we can properly manage that.
What kind of treatment?
Well, I believe that this is the greatest township in New Jersey, and that we have the residents that are unparalleled. And I think if we can build consensus that something needs to be done, that we can do it. And what I would like is just simply, I think a great result here tonight would be if we can agree that we have to attack these issues, because they go for quality of life of our residents, and they're not issues that I'm bringing up. I may be magnifying this, but these are issues that you find all over the place, whether they're in the maintenance and recreation committee, whether you find them online, whether you find them talking to your neighbors, or as I found them knocking doors all summer and fall, or just going to use the facilities myself with my family. I would just like to build a consensus and a political will to take action to do what we know is right to do. That to me is the permanent thing. Solving problems, we're great at that. We have the best people, and we have the best people that are running our clubs. We have the best people that come forward and volunteer. So I would just like to build the will to act and to prioritize.
I'm 100% on board. There's
So
no question.
Can you be specific? Are you suggesting that we use herbicides?
I didn't make any, well, you can't use herbicide to fix a tennis court. But what I'm asking is, do you recognize that can we recognize that this is a problem and that we need to put it on our agenda? An agenda to me is a list of priorities. A budget is a list of priorities with funds behind it. So we need to first build our agenda. And I'm proposing that this is a serious issue. We need to push it towards the top of our agenda. I'm just trying to get to that point. Can we come to that conclusion?
That we have to do something. Maybe we could get the kids out there and let them pull out. That would be a good thing.
Madam Mayor, may I make a couple of comments, please?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Some of these items, well, not some of the items, the items here are legitimate, but there are some things that are in progress that the Township Committee should know about. Number one, for Mountain View here, we're getting prices for netting that would go on the first and third base side. It would be 20-foot tall, and it would go from the backstop all the way out to the foul poles on both sides. That way, the fields could be used for soccer, for lacrosse, for the camps that are used in the summer, and could be used for different practices. But that's one of the keys. This way you won't lose balls. But we're getting prices on that netting so that we can go out and order that. There's the issue with the I guess what is it, the ground wasps, or what is it that's in center field? Yeah,
there's ground nesting wasps.
So the cicada killers?
Yeah, they kill bees.
Yeah, there's they're there for a period of time. I mean, I don't know how you would address that, but one of the things that you would do is you when they're around you schedule around it. You don't use that field, but they're only out for a period of 4 to 6 weeks. And
We gotta be able to do something better than that.
well, until you can figure it out, I don't know.
Yeah,
There's a
we
big
gotta be able to
honeycomb.
do
I don't know if there's a big honeycomb under there and how you deal with it, but the
That is probably one of the biggest complaints I know I get of emails and just talking to neighbors and stuff. They're like, our fields, my gosh, they're falling apart.
Yeah.
And you know, just driving by, we see them, they're falling apart. Gotta be able to do something. And if one of the issues is ground nesting wasps, What, how do we get rid of them? There's gotta be companies here that can get rid of them.
Well, it could be, but one of the things you do is you schedule around. They're out
You
for,
just schedule around.
they're a finite period of time, and you use the field in the late summer, you use the field in the fall, but the key
Well, what
is.
about the spring? Like, there's so much rest of the year, so you
Are
have to use the heat.
you aware the ground nesting lots being in need of protection?
No, I'm not, but what I'm saying is the first thing that we're, to make the fields more usable is we want to get those, the netting up so that it's easier to use. That's one of the, that's one of the things that many of the coaches have said that they don't want to use the fields because, it's easier to lose the balls. And last year we had soccer camps that were there, and they were used over the summer when those ground moss weren't there, but until we figure out how to do it.
We gotta get rid of them.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, I don't think it's reasonable to ask our residents to change their schedule of when they wanna do sports around a breeding period of ground nesting wasp, or whatever it is.
Well, the goal is to use the field more than it's been used because it hasn't been
Correct.
used a lot.
We
And
need to
so,
use it.
so it has been ramping up, but that's something that has to be addressed. Esternay was rested because it was basically bald, and they took it offline.
Can we throw some seeds on
Well,
there?
I believe it's ready to go. They took it offline, they rested it. I haven't taken a close look at it, but our DPW did a really nice job on the playground area. They put new split rail fences up, and they changed out the material, but it's, that's an issue. With that field, it had been overused, and, I believe-
Perhaps we can find a way of, throwing some proper nutrients onto it or whatever that it needs to grow faster so that we don't have to have it not being used for a year or two as it rests. I mean, it just seems a little, it can rest for a week or two, but for years, I think is a bit much to ask the residents.
The first season.
Yes.
If we, well, our ordinances, it seemed to me, have a call for a moratorium on fertilizer until 15 days before March 1st. So we're right in the sweet spot, according to my, review in our ordinances of when we can really heavily go after that in terms of preparing our fields with, fertilizers to grow grass. But the rest of it, it's a technical problem. I'm sure our public works can help us. We can solve these issues. It's just a question of the will. Do we have the will to do this?
I have the will. What about the rose fields? What did they do? I don't know.
Well, if I could go back to one other thing, I think everybody's in agreement that there's improvements to the tennis courts need to be done, and that should be a priority for this year. So that's that's something that can be moved upon in a rather quick manner.
And that is on the Rossi, so we can use open space to make sure that they're up and running appropriately, correct?
The tennis courts were on the capital plan, so that was, intended to fix those, because there should have been some repairs done that last year, and I think it was on the capital plan for this year for a full refurbishment, and there's the funds. Between the 2 cents last year and then 2 cents this year, there's plenty of money, so I definitely support getting these things up and running. I'd like to know what that exactly means, but the other reality is we have these funds, so certainly open space is intended for acquisition and for preservation
And maintenance.
It does have that maintenance component. So and not just maintenance, but including facilities. So, but it's not just these fields. We should be looking at this holistically, and we had talked about reaching out on a survey of the rec program to ask them what their needs are. Was this a comprehensive request to all the rec program?
No, this is just to discuss on come to a consensus that we need to figure out something to do with our fields. And if we are in a tight time frame with our options to fertilizer, we wanted to discuss.
Well, what was that decision did? I mean, I assume this board does not have to meet and vote every time somebody wants to
No.
apply fertilizer.
No, but there
I'm talking
are
about
ordinances.
fertilizer, not pesticides, those are
Correct.
different things, yeah. So who making that call? Rich, is it happening?
It's just, I literally, I believe that would be just the will to do it. You know, you can't solve a problem unless you identify the problem. And I guess I'm putting forth the problem in this discussion is really just to see, you know, are we willing to move forward with this? Because clearly in the past, we were not. I mean, we're not. We weren't, because, you know, for the last 2 years at least, these things have been really falling apart and they need to be addressed. And I think we have great people that can address it. It's just a question of will we?
Yes.
This ties in.
No, I mean, we've been working countless hours. I know, and I know you have,
Yeah.
Figuring out what to do, you know, what we can, improve with our recreation facilities. I know I've been working to try and get those bathrooms open. We're in the process. Various different aspects of this. I think this is just as important, getting these fields up and running. So I would say yes.
You know, to the extent Mr. Carr, I'm sure, is still watching at home, this sort of dovetails into the overall thing.
Correct.
We need to rest fields, you know, like, why should yesterday be overused or run to baldness when we have an option for playing some games at the open golf facility that we're just apparently not taking. So I'm all on board with that too. But I think the understanding is that we're just sort of taking this opportunity to flag an issue as a committee, and I think we probably are all in agreement that this is something that, you know, needs to be a focus. And you know, I understand at some point along the way there might be disagreements, but I think we're all in agreement about this.
Now, the other part of it is, when we decided not to do a master plan, when we didn't pass that, we lost the opportunity to have facility discussion, because that was supposed to go through that vehicle. So we really need to have a broad facility discussion.
Yes. And that is, something that is going in front of the planning board is basically a mini master plan for our open space and recreation. But I figured this should be separate. This should be your open space one. Open space and recreation, essentially. All right, is there anything else to discuss on this? Or, whenever you want.
What, you got something to add now?
Well, I'm concerned about what kind of fertilizer you'll be using, or if you're considering using herbicides, which I think we have an ordinance that you can't use.
As we sit here right now, herbicides are illegal in this.
Correct.
municipality.
There's gotta be something out there. I don't know much about
So
fertilizer.
you need to discuss it with a,
Right, my thought process is just, I don't know enough about fertilizers, or I can tell you the difference between them all. But we gotta do something, so maybe we can all, you know, find a way of, if you have suggestions that have worked in the past, but they have to actually work. We need functioning green grass on these fields.
well, we don't need to have it look like a golf course.
Not a golf course, but it needs to be something. It needs to be something
It needs to
decent.
look like a baseball.
I'm sorry, could you just say weeds are green and they would work? Because that, I mean, that's specifically the issue that, because
Yeah.
this
You
is
can't
the
play
issue of
baseball
oil.
on weeds. You
Yeah,
can't.
or crabgrass
And we
and
have to
that.
be able to act.
The ground wasps that Esther over here have been a problem, you know, since my kids were little, so over a
Yeah.
decade, even when we were using pesticides, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, there has to be an answer, to it. A lot of these problems have been in existence for a long time.
I don't disagree.
And I just wanted to also let you know that, school district of Chatham's, of course, doesn't fall under our ordinances, and they are using, pesticides of various types, and we are alerted to their use when they use them. And that is certainly, a reasonable precaution if pesticides or herbicides were to be used, a reasonable approach. But that's not the question before us. The question before us is, do we have a will to act? Because we've been asked by our residents and by our constituents to improve this. And there is going to have to be some sort of give and take in order to make these improvements. It's not going to happen the way we've been doing it, because the way we've been doing it doesn't work. And I guess what I would love is if we could identify this as an actual problem and to build consensus.
It is a problem.
That, well, you say that.
At least
I say that.
I can say, do you believe it's a problem?
Yes.
Okay, at the very least, the majority of this committee believes that this is a problem.
I think everybody
I think
agrees
everybody
that-
does.
that this is something
But I have
that
to
needs to
see.
be discussed further and addressed. That's really all we're
Okay.
saying. This is the beginning of the discussion.
Thank you.
All right, well, we have to go into executive session, so to finish discussing a couple items. So
And there'll be no, public business after the executive.
there will be no public business after the executive session.
No action.
Thank you. And no action will be taken. So, can I get a motion to go into executive session number 2?
I second that.
All right, can I do an all in favor? Is this
That's,
roll call?
Mrs. Ewell,
Yes.
Mrs. Funako.
Yeah.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton. And Mayor Felice.
Yes, all right.
Motion approved.
We get a 5-minute
We take
break.
5 minutes.
Yes, 5-minute break, recess, so that we can go
We
back.
should take it that way, the executive session will go quicker, if you all have to stay there.
That's true. Fair point. I just really have to go to the bathroom.
It's gonna go quick.
It'll go quickly. We won't go. Everyone has to leave and ask questions.